Trapped in a burning forest with her puppies, she fights to save them. What follows will amaze you. The forest crackled with an ominous symphony of destruction as flames devoured everything in their path. Through the thick smoke and intense heat, a golden retriever named Bella raced against time, her heart pounding with maternal desperation. 5 tiny puppies, barely 3 weeks old, lay hidden beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree, their lives hanging by a thread as the inferno closed in. Bella's singed fur and scorched paws told the story of multiple journeys through the flames, each time emerging with one of her precious puppies held gently in her mouth. 4 were now safely tucked away in a hollow log beyond the fire's reach, but one remained the smallest of the litter, a fragile soul whose faint whimpers guided her through the suffocating smoke. The wall of fire between Bella and her last puppy grew higher with each passing second. Her lungs burned from the toxic fumes and her muscles screamed in protest, but maternal instinct drove her forward. She could hear her 4 rescued puppies crying in the distance, their voices nearly drowned out by the roaring inferno. Through stinging eyes, Bella spotted a narrow gap in the flames. Without hesitation, she launched herself through it, ignoring the searing pain as embers rained down on her back. The heat was unbearable, but the sound of her puppy's weakening cries spurred her on. Reaching the oak tree, she found her tiny pup huddled in the furthest corner, trembling with fear. Just as Bella gently grabbed her last puppy, a thunderous crack split the air. A massive burning branch crashed down, blocking their escape route. Bella stood frozen, her precious cargo secure in her mouth, but death seemed to surround them on all sides. The smoke was getting thicker, and the puppy in her grasp had gone terrifyingly still. In that moment, through the curtain of smoke and flames, a figure emerged. Emily Carter, a firefighter who had broken away from her team after hearing strange sounds, stumbled upon the heart-wrenching scene. Her eyes met Bella's, and in that instant a connection formed that would change both their lives forever. But with the fire closing in rapidly and no clear escape route, time was running out. The next few moments would determine not just their survival, but the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would touch countless lives. Long before the devastating fire, Bella's story began in the gentle hands of Sarah Anderson, a retired schoolteacher living on the outskirts of Maple Grove. Sarah's modest farmhouse, with its sprawling yard and weathered fence, had been a sanctuary for countless rescued animals over the years. The day she found Bella huddled beneath her porch during a thunderstorm, the golden retriever was just a malnourished puppy with matted fur and fearful eyes. Sarah nursed Bella back to health, spending countless hours teaching her to trust again. Under her care, Bella blossomed into a gentle, loving dog with an extraordinary capacity for empathy. She would often sit beside sick animals Sarah took in, offering silent comfort and unwavering companionship. The bond between Sarah and Bella grew stronger with each passing day, their routine a testament to the healing power of patience and love. But fate had other plans. Mark Hamilton, a seemingly charming local businessman, began visiting Sarah's farm regularly, expressing interest in her animal rescue work. He spoke passionately about wanting to give a dog a forever home, sharing stories about his late wife's love for golden retrievers. His words were convincing, his demeanor sincere, and Sarah, despite her initial reservations, began to consider him as a potential adopter for Bella. What Sarah didn't know was that Mark's entire story was fabricated. He was connected to a network of illegal puppy mills searching for purebred dogs to exploit for breeding. His interest in Bella wasn't born of love, but of cold calculation. Her perfect bloodline and gentle temperament made her an ideal candidate for their operation. Through careful manipulation and false promises, Mark convinced Sarah to let him adopt Bella. He presented forged references, staged home visits, and even created a fictional backstory about his veterinary connections. Sarah, her judgment clouded by his seemingly genuine desire to provide Bella with a loving home, made the heart-wrenching decision to let her go. The transition to Mark's house marked the beginning of Bella's darkest days. The comfortable home he had shown Sarah during the home visit was replaced by a cold, concrete kennel behind his property. Bella's days became an endless cycle of neglect and isolation, broken only by Mark's sporadic attempts at breeding her. The once trusting dog began to withdraw, her spirit dimming with each passing month. Despite the harsh conditions, Bella's gentle nature never fully wavered. She would share her meager food with other dogs in the facility, offer comfort to newcomers, and maintain a quiet dignity that somehow survived the worst of her treatment. The local homeless community, who often sought shelter near Mark's property, noticed her plight. They began sneaking her extra food and offering what comfort they could through the kennel fencing. Among them was old Joe, a Vietnam veteran who recognized the same trauma in Bella's eyes that he saw in his own reflection. He began spending his nights near her kennel, talking to her softly and sharing stories of his own journey from darkness to hope. Through these small acts of kindness, Bella's will to survive strengthened, even as her conditions worsened. The turning point came during a particularly harsh winter. Mark's neglect reached new depths as he abandoned the dogs for days during a severe snowstorm. With temperatures plummeting and food supplies dwindling, Bella's survival instincts kicked in. Using the strength she had carefully preserved and skills learned from watching other escaped dogs, she managed to dig her way under the kennel fencing. Freedom, however, brought new challenges. Bella found herself navigating the streets of Maple Grove, avoiding dog catchers and searching for food. Her golden coat, once lustrous under Sarah's care, became matted and dirty. Yet even in her desperate state, her compassionate nature shone through. Other strays would often find scraps of food left in hidden corners, Bella's way of helping those even less fortunate than herself. During this time, she made multiple attempts to return to Sarah's farm, but Mark had ensured the elderly woman had moved away, selling her property to developers. Each failed journey back to her first loving home chipped away at Bella's hope, but never her fundamental kindness. As spring approached, Bella discovered she was pregnant, a final cruel legacy of her time in Mark's breeding operation. She began searching for a safe place to have her puppies, eventually finding shelter in the roots of an ancient oak tree deep in the forest. The location offered protection from the elements and relative safety from predators, though food remained scarce. The local homeless community, particularly old Joe, continued to look out for her, leaving food at the forest's edge when they could. They respected her need for space but maintained their silent support, understanding all too well the importance of dignity and survival. Bella's pregnancy progressed, and despite the challenges, she remained determined to give her puppies a better life than she had known. The birth of her 5 puppies was both a miracle and a new chapter of struggle. Each puppy represented both hope and responsibility, a chance to protect and nurture the kind of love she had once known with Sarah. Through all the hardships, Bella never lost the gentle spirit that Sarah had nurtured, passing this same tenderness on to her puppies despite their harsh circumstances. As her puppies grew stronger, Bella began teaching them the survival skills she had learned, while also showing them the importance of kindness. She would demonstrate how to find food, stay safe, and navigate their world, but also how to share with others and offer comfort to those in need. It was a delicate balance of survival and compassion, one that would ultimately prove crucial in the events to come. This was Bella's story when the forest fire began, a tale of resilience, unwavering kindness, and the strength to survive without losing the capacity to love. Her past had shaped her but hadn't hardened her heart, preparing her for the ultimate test of courage that awaited in the flames. Emily Carter's path to becoming a firefighter was paved with loss and determination. Growing up in the St. Joseph's Children's Home after losing both parents in a house fire at age 6, Emily carried the weight of that tragedy like a shadow. The memories of that night, the suffocating smoke, the helpless cries, and the brave firefighter who carried her to safety shaped her destiny in ways she couldn't fully comprehend until years later. Life at St. Joseph's taught Emily both the harsh realities of being alone and the extraordinary power of resilience. Sister Margaret, a kind-hearted nun who ran the orphanage, became her closest confidante, encouraging Emily's dream of becoming a firefighter even when others dismissed it as a child's fantasy. "It's not about the strength of your muscles," Sister Margaret would say, "but the strength of your heart that makes a true hero." Despite excelling academically and earning a full scholarship to college, Emily faced constant skepticism about her chosen path. Her small frame and gentle demeanor didn't match the stereotypical image of a firefighter, and the male-dominated field seemed determined to remind her of this at every turn. During her training at the Fire Academy, she endured not only the physical challenges but also the subtle jabs and not-so-subtle doubts from her peers. "You're too soft for this job," Carter became a common refrain from her instructors and fellow trainees. But what they saw as softness was actually her greatest strength and deep empathy that drove her to push harder, train longer, and never give up. Emily learned to turn their skepticism into fuel, channeling it into every physical test, every training exercise, and every moment of doubt. The breakthrough came during her final year at the academy. During a routine training exercise, Emily was the only one who noticed signs of genuine distress in a volunteer acting as a victim. While others focused on the technical aspects of the rescue, she picked up on subtle cues that indicated real medical emergency. Her quick thinking and immediate response saved the volunteer from a severe asthma attack, earning her reluctant respect from even her harshest critics. Graduating in the top 5% of her class, Emily secured a position at the Maple Grove Fire Department. However, proving herself in training was just the beginning. The real challenge came in the daily grind of station life, where she often found herself isolated both socially and professionally. The old guard, led by Captain Richard, seemed particularly resistant to her presence, often assigning her to desk duty despite her proven capabilities in the field. Yet Emily found unexpected allies among the station's rescue dogs, particularly an aging German shepherd named Max, who had been relegated to retirement. During her off hours, she would work with Max, helping him regain strength in his injured leg through patient rehabilitation. The other firefighters watched with mild amusement as she spent hours with the dog others had given up on, but Emily saw in Max what others couldn't: an unwavering spirit beneath the physical limitations. Her dedication paid off when Max, despite his supposed retirement, alerted the station to a trapped child during a warehouse fire, leading Emily through the smoke to save the young boy. This incident marked a subtle shift in how her colleagues viewed her. They began to recognize that her different approach to firefighting, one that combined technical skill with intuitive understanding, brought unique value to the team. Still, acceptance came slowly. Emily lived alone in a modest apartment near the station, her off hours devoted to further training and volunteering at local animal shelters. The walls of her home were covered not with commendations or certificates, but with photos of the animals she had helped rescue and rehabilitate. Each picture told a story of patience, healing, and the kind of quiet courage that often went unrecognized. The turning point in her career came during the infamous Hamilton factory fire, where her smaller frame allowed her to navigate through a collapsed section that larger firefighters couldn't access. She saved 3 workers that day, but it was her careful extraction of a trapped cat and her subsequent care for the animal that caught the local media's attention. The story painted her as a different kind of hero, one who saved lives while preserving compassion. This publicity brought unexpected challenges. Some colleagues accused her of seeking attention, while others suggested she was making them look bad by going above and beyond for animals. Emily weathered these criticisms with characteristic grace, never letting them deter her from following both her professional duties and her heart. As years passed, Emily developed a reputation among local rescue organizations as the person to call when animals were involved in emergency situations. She created unofficial protocols for pet rescue during disasters, though her suggestions were often dismissed by department leadership as unnecessary. Yet she persisted, keeping detailed records of every animal she encountered during calls, tracking their outcomes, and quietly building a case for better emergency response procedures for pets. The night of the forest fire that would bring Bella into her life, Emily was already facing professional crossroads. Budget cuts had threatened the closure of the station's remaining K-9 unit, and she had been fighting a losing battle to maintain it. Her passion for animal welfare had begun to clash more frequently with departmental politics, leaving her questioning her place in the force. What Emily didn't know was that her years of being too soft had prepared her perfectly for the challenge ahead. Her unique combination of professional skill and compassionate instinct would prove essential not just for saving lives, but for fighting a different kind of battle, one that would test every lesson she had learned about perseverance, justice, and the true meaning of strength. Scout, the smallest of Bella's puppies, possessed a spirit that defied his fragile appearance. Born last and significantly smaller than his siblings, his early struggles to survive seemed to imbue him with an extraordinary sensitivity to others' pain. His tiny frame housed a heart that appeared to understand suffering on a deeper level. While his siblings played and wrestled, Scout would often pause to comfort any creature showing signs of distress, pressing his small body against them in silent support. Dr. Catherine Harper, the lead veterinarian at Maple Grove Animal Hospital, brought 20 years of experience and an unshakable dedication to her work. Her steel gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses gave her an air of authority, but it was her gentle hands and soothing voice that earned her the trust of both animals and their human companions. Having witnessed countless cases of abuse and neglect, Dr. Harper had developed a protective shell that only softened when working with her patients. Her own history of fighting against bureaucratic indifference made her a natural ally in difficult cases. Mrs. Sarah Anderson, Bella's original owner, carried the weight of her decision to trust Mark heavily. Living on a fixed income in a small apartment across town, she had never stopped searching for news of Bella. Her walls were lined with photos of the animals she had rescued over the years, but Bella's picture held a special place above her reading chair. The elderly woman's guilt over unknowingly placing Bella in harm's way drove her to become an outspoken advocate against puppy mills, though few took the seemingly frail woman seriously. Mark Hamilton presented a complex figure in the community. His polished exterior and charitable donations to local causes masked a troubled soul shaped by his own dark past. Once a respected business owner, his descent into the world of illegal breeding operations stemmed from financial desperation after his wife's death. The local press portrayed him as a pillar of the community, unaware of the suffering he caused behind closed doors. His ability to manipulate public opinion made him a formidable opponent in any dispute. The homeless community near Mark's property formed an unlikely support network for Bella. Led by Old Joe, a Vietnam veteran whose understanding of trauma ran bone deep, they became silent guardians of her well-being. Despite their own hardships, they shared what little they had, creating a chain of compassion that would later prove crucial to understanding Bella's story. Each member of this informal family had their own tale of loss and resilience, finding purpose in protecting those even more vulnerable than themselves. Rachel Mitchell, a young lawyer fresh out of law school, worked at the local legal aid office. Her passion for animal rights cases often put her at odds with more pragmatic colleagues who believed such cases wasted resources. When Emily brought Bella's case to her attention, Rachel saw an opportunity to challenge the system that often overlooked animal welfare. Her inexperience was balanced by a fierce determination and creative legal thinking that would prove invaluable. Captain James Richards, Emily's superior at the fire station, initially represented the old guard's resistance to change. His 25 years of service had left him set in traditional ways of firefighting, viewing Emily's concern for animals as a distraction from real emergency work. However, his gruff exterior masked a growing uncertainty about his long-held beliefs, especially as he witnessed the impact of Emily's approach to rescue work. The local media, particularly young reporter Michael Chen from the Maple Grove Gazette, played a crucial role in shaping public perception of Bella's story. Initially drawn to the dramatic rescue from the forest fire, Chen discovered a deeper narrative about community, justice, and the bonds between humans and animals. His articles would help rally public support, though his pursuit of the story sometimes complicated the legal proceedings. The staff at Maple Grove Animal Hospital became an extended family for Bella and her puppies. Nurse Jenny Thompson, a recent graduate with a gift for calming anxious animals, spent countless extra hours monitoring their recovery. Technician Dave Wilson, whose gruff exterior belied a tender heart, snuck in special treats and would often be found reading to the puppies during his breaks. The community of pet owners whose lives had been touched by Emily's previous rescues formed a grassroots support network. Leading them was Martha Ramirez, owner of a local pet supply store, who organized fundraisers and rallied support through social media. Her network of customers and fellow animal lovers became a powerful force in raising awareness and resources for Bella's cause. Judge Patricia Montgomery, who would eventually preside over Bella's case, brought her own unique perspective to the proceedings. Known for her strict adherence to the letter of the law, she also harbored a deep understanding of animal welfare issues, having volunteered at shelters in her youth. Her challenge would be balancing legal precedent with moral imperatives in a case that defied simple solutions. Officer Steve Burke, the local animal control officer, had a history of monitoring Mark's property following anonymous complaints. Though bound by departmental procedures and limited resources, he had maintained detailed records of his observations, creating a paper trail that would become significant later. His professional caution often conflicted with his personal concerns about the situations he witnessed. Each of these characters brought their own strengths, weaknesses, and motivations to Bella's story. Their interactions created a complex web of relationships that would be tested and transformed by the events to come. Some would rise to unexpected heights of courage and compassion, while others would be forced to confront their own prejudices and past mistakes. Together they formed the backdrop against which Bella's journey would unfold, each playing a crucial role in the fight for justice and redemption. The fire that would change everything began innocently enough. A group of weekend campers, ignoring the posted fire warnings during the unusually dry summer, left their campsite believing they had properly extinguished their fire. But beneath the seemingly cold ashes, a single ember remained alive, nurtured by the dry underbrush and fanned by the rising wind. The forest of Maple Grove had stood for generations, its ancient oaks and towering pines creating a sanctuary for countless creatures. That peaceful Thursday evening, as the sun began to set, the weather conditions created a perfect storm. The drought had left the vegetation tinder dry, and the wind, picking up strength as night approached, carried that single spark into a patch of dead leaves. At first, the fire spread slowly, almost hesitantly, creating small fingers of flame that crept along the forest floor. The wildlife sensed the danger before it became visible. Birds took flight in confused flocks, deer bounded away from their usual grazing spots, and smaller creatures scurried for safety. The normal evening chorus of the forest was replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the growing crackle of flames. Bella, nestled with her puppies in their den beneath the old oak's roots, picked up the first sense of danger long before the flames became visible. Her nose twitched at the acrid smell of smoke, and her ears perked up at the unusual silence that had fallen over the forest. Years of survival on the streets had honed her instincts, and every one of them now screamed of impending danger. The fire gathered strength with frightening speed, feeding on the dry underbrush and leaping from tree to tree. The warm evening air created a thermal current that pulled the flames higher, turning small fires into towering infernos. The sky, previously painted in sunset colors, now glowed an ominous orange, and thick smoke began to obscure the stars. Inside their den, Bella's puppies remained blissfully unaware of the approaching danger. At just 3 weeks old, their eyes had only recently opened, and they were still completely dependent on their mother. Scout, the smallest, was curled up against his mother's warm side, while his siblings nursed or slept nearby. The den had been their entire world since birth, a safe haven from the dangers that Bella knew all too well. The first real sign of danger came when burning branches began to fall near the den's entrance. The comfortable temperature of their shelter started to rise, and the air grew thick with smoke. Bella's maternal instincts kicked into high gear as she realized their sanctuary was about to become a trap. She needed to move her puppies, but the nearest safe location she knew was on the other side of what was rapidly becoming a wall of flame. The decision to move was forced upon her when a massive burning branch crashed down just feet from their den, sending sparks showering over the entrance. The puppies, finally sensing their mother's distress, began to whimper and squirm. The sound of their frightened cries galvanized Bella into action. She knew she couldn't move all 5 puppies at once. She would have to make multiple trips through increasingly dangerous conditions. Time seemed to compress as Bella began her rescue mission. She grabbed the first puppy, her teeth gently but firmly gripping the scruff of its neck. The heat was already intense as she emerged from the den, and the smoke made it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Using her knowledge of the forest and her keen sense of smell, she located a hollow log a safe distance from the advancing fire. Each return trip became more challenging. The fire was moving faster now, creating its own wind that whipped embers and burning debris through the air. The smoke grew thicker, making it harder to breathe and navigate. The temperature continued to rise, and Bella's fur began to singe from the intense heat, yet she pressed on, her determination unwavering. By the time she had moved the 4th puppy, the situation had become dire. The fire had nearly encircled their position, and the old oak tree that had sheltered them was now engulfed in flames. Scout, the smallest and last remaining puppy, was alone in the den, his cries barely audible over the roar of the inferno. The path back to the den had become a gauntlet of falling branches and leaping flames. The ground itself was hot enough to burn Bella's paws, and the air was almost too thick to breathe. Any other animal would have given up, accepting the impossible odds. But Bella was driven by something stronger than self-preservation, the unconditional love of a mother for her child. As she made her final approach to the den, a massive section of the burning oak crashed down, sending a shower of sparks and burning debris in all directions. The entrance to the den was now partially blocked, and the heat was becoming unbearable. Scout's cries had grown weaker, adding urgency to Bella's already desperate mission. In these final moments before Emily's arrival, Bella faced a mother's worst nightmare. The fire had created a nearly impenetrable barrier between her and her last puppy, but the alternative, leaving Scout behind, was unthinkable. Her own survival meant nothing if it came at the cost of abandoning her child. With this resolve, she prepared herself for one final, desperate attempt to reach her puppy, knowing that success or failure would be determined in the next few crucial moments. Emily Carter had been on duty for 18 straight hours when the call about the forest fire came in. The exhaustion that had been creeping into her bones vanished instantly when she heard the location, the northeastern section of Maple Grove Forest, an area she knew was home to countless wildlife. Despite the chief's orders to focus on containing the fire's perimeter, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was drawing her deeper into the burning woods. The heat hit her like a wall as she maneuvered through the burning forest. Her protective gear, designed to withstand extreme temperatures, was being tested to its limits. Through her oxygen mask, she could barely make out shapes in the thick smoke, but years of training had taught her to trust her instincts. Something wasn't right. The wildlife evacuation pattern seemed irregular, with animals fleeing in confused circles rather than away from the flames. Then she heard a sound distinct from the fire's roar. A desperate bark, followed by what seemed like weakening whimpers. Without hesitation, Emily broke away from her assigned position, moving toward the sound despite the protest crackling through her radio. The visibility was near zero and the heat was becoming unbearable, but she pressed forward, guided by both training and intuition. The scene that emerged through the smoke stopped her in her tracks. A golden retriever, her fur singed and paws bleeding, was attempting to reach a partially collapsed den beneath a burning oak tree. The dog's determination was evident in every movement, even as she limped on burned paws. Emily's trained eye quickly assessed the situation. The dog had clearly made multiple trips through the fire, as evidenced by her progressively worsening burns. Time was running out. The ancient oak was groaning ominously, its trunk weakened by the intense heat. Emily knew they had minutes, maybe seconds, before the entire tree collapsed. The golden retriever locked eyes with her, and in that moment Emily saw something she recognized, the same desperate determination she'd felt as a child when firefighters pulled her from her own burning home, leaving her parents behind. Without wasting another second, Emily reached for the dog, but Bella had already turned back toward the den. Understanding dawned quickly there was still a puppy trapped inside. The smoke was getting thicker, and Emily's oxygen tank beeped a warning of low supply. The decision she faced mirrored the one she'd been training for her entire career: when to take risks and when to retreat. The next few moments became a choreographed dance between human and animal. Emily, using her smaller frame to advantage, managed to crawl closer to the den's entrance while Bella showed her exactly where to reach. The heat was intense enough to melt parts of Emily's protective gear, but she pushed forward, guided by Bella's unwavering focus on her trapped puppy. Inside the den, Scout lay motionless, overcome by smoke. Emily's heart nearly stopped when her gloved hand finally reached him. His tiny body was barely warm. With gentle but swift movements, she extracted him from the den, immediately checking for signs of life. A faint heartbeat was all she needed to spring into action. Years of emergency training kicked in as she administered rescue breaths to the tiny puppy, all while Bella watched with anxious eyes. The rescue wasn't over yet. They were still surrounded by fire, and Emily's oxygen was dangerously low. The path back to safety was rapidly disappearing as the fire consumed everything in its path. Bella seemed to understand the urgency, leading Emily toward where she had hidden her other puppies. The hollow log, though safer than the den, was also at risk from the advancing flames. Emily made a quick decision, removing her outer protective jacket to create a makeshift carrier for the puppies. With Bella's help, she gathered all 5 puppies, noting with relief that Scout had begun to show signs of life. The extra weight of the puppies and the loss of her protective gear made each step more challenging, but Emily knew their only chance was to move quickly. The journey out of the fire zone became a test of endurance and trust. Bella, despite her injuries, stayed close to Emily, helping her navigate through the smoke-filled forest. Several times they had to change direction as burning trees crashed down around them. Emily's lungs burned and her muscles screamed in protest, but the warm bundle of puppies against her chest reminded her of why she had become a firefighter in the first place. Emergency crews had begun to gather at the forest's edge, and the beams of their searchlights provided a beacon of hope. Emily's radio had long since failed, and she knew her disappearance must have caused concern. As they finally emerged from the smoke, the scene erupted into action. Medical teams rushed forward, oxygen masks were applied, and gentle hands reached for Bella and her puppies. The immediate danger had passed, but Emily knew this was just the beginning. As she watched the medical team work on Bella and her puppies, she felt a connection that went beyond rescuer and rescued. In Bella's unwavering devotion to her puppies, Emily saw a reflection of her own dedication to saving lives, regardless of species. The burns would heal, but the bond forged in those flames would prove unbreakable. The emergency arrival at Maple Grove Animal Hospital set off a flurry of activity that would last through the night. Dr. Catherine Harper, already working late on paperwork, sprang into action the moment Emily's emergency call came through. The hospital's quiet evening routine transformed into an orchestrated chaos of medical preparation, with staff members rushing to set up burn treatment stations and oxygen therapy units. Bella's arrival was a moment Dr. Harper would never forget. Despite severe burns, dehydration, and smoke inhalation, the Golden Retriever's first action upon being placed on the examination table was to try to reach her puppies. The medical team worked quickly, assessing the extent of Bella's injuries while simultaneously checking each puppy. Scout, the smallest, required immediate oxygen therapy, his tiny lungs struggling to clear the smoke he had inhaled. The initial examination revealed the true extent of Bella's sacrifice. Her paws were severely burned from multiple trips through the fire, and patches of her fur were singed down to the skin. Burns covered nearly 20% of her body, with the worst concentrated on her back and sides where falling embers had struck her. Yet through all the pain and examination, Bella remained alert, her eyes constantly tracking the movement of her puppies. Emily refused to leave, staying well past her shift to help with the recovery effort. Her own minor burns and smoke inhalation were treated on site, allowing her to assist the medical team. She became Bella's unofficial guardian, helping to calm the anxious mother whenever the puppies needed to be taken for tests or treatment. The bond formed in the fire grew stronger with each passing hour. The first crisis came around midnight when Scout's condition suddenly deteriorated. His oxygen levels dropped dangerously low, and Dr. Harper feared the smoke damage to his lungs might be too severe. The tiny puppy's struggle for life became a battle that united the entire hospital staff. Bella, sensing her smallest pup's distress, broke free from her own treatment area and limped to his side, gently nuzzling him through the oxygen tent. Dawn brought the first signs of hope. Scout's condition stabilized and his siblings showed remarkable resilience, their youth helping them recover from the smoke exposure. Bella's burns were cleaned and dressed, though Dr. Harper warned that the healing process would be long and painful. The morning also brought media attention, with local news crews gathering outside the hospital, drawn by reports of the dramatic rescue. It was during this initial recovery period that the first complications arose. Mark Hamilton arrived at the hospital, having seen the news coverage. His appearance sent an immediate chill through the room as he claimed ownership of Bella. The change in Bella's demeanor was instant, and telling the brave dog who had faced fire to save her puppy suddenly trembled and tried to make herself as small as possible. Emily, still at the hospital, witnessed the interaction and saw what others might have missed: the scars beneath Bella's burned fur that spoke of older abuses. Her firefighter's training in identifying signs of trauma kicked in, and she quietly began documenting everything she observed. Dr. Harper, too, noticed inconsistencies between Mark's claims of recent ownership and Bella's physical condition, particularly older injuries that predated the fire. The situation became more complex when old Joe, the homeless veteran, somehow made his way into the hospital. His appearance was shabby, and security initially tried to remove him, but his knowledge of Bella's recent history was undeniable. He described in detail how he had watched over her during her pregnancy, sharing his own meager food supplies and offering what protection he could. The hospital became a convergence point of competing interests. Mark insisted on his rights as owner, while Emily and the medical team advocated for Bella's continued treatment. Dr. Harper found herself in a difficult position. legally obligated to acknowledge Mark's claim while ethically committed to her patient's well-being. The puppies, meanwhile, continued to require round-the-clock care, with Scout still in critical condition. Local news coverage of the rescue had caught the attention of animal rights activists, and small groups began to gather outside the hospital. Their presence added another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. Mark's attempts to remove Bella were met with fierce resistance from both the medical team and the growing crowd of supporters outside. A temporary resolution came when Dr. Harper declared Bella and her puppies too medically fragile to be moved. She cited the critical nature of burn treatment and the puppy's ongoing need for monitoring, effectively buying time for Emily to explore legal options. Mark left the hospital angry but thwarted, at least temporarily. The initial recovery period revealed not just the physical challenges ahead, but the emotional and legal battles looming on the horizon. As Bella's burns slowly began to heal and her puppies grew stronger, the question of their future became increasingly urgent. Emily found herself at a crossroads, knowing that saving them from the fire might have been the easiest part of their journey together. The legal battle for Bella's future began on a rainy Monday morning, 3 weeks after the forest fire. Mark Hamilton arrived at the Maple Grove Animal Hospital with his lawyer, Thomas Sterling, a sharp-suited corporate attorney known for his aggressive tactics. They carried a thick folder of documentation claiming to establish Mark's ownership of Bella, including registration papers and veterinary records that, on the surface, appeared legitimate. Emily, still recovering from her own minor injuries, watched in dismay as Mark confidently strode through the hospital doors. She had spent the past weeks researching animal rights laws and gathering evidence of Bella's condition, but facing the reality of Mark's legal offensive was daunting. The sight of Bella trembling at the mere sound of Mark's voice strengthened Emily's resolve to fight. Rachel Mitchell, the young legal aid attorney who had agreed to take Emily's case, arrived moments after Mark. Despite her relative inexperience, Rachel's passion for animal welfare cases shone through as she immediately began challenging the validity of Mark's documentation. Her trained eye caught discrepancies in dates and signatures that others might have missed. The initial confrontation took place in Dr. Harper's office, where Mark demanded immediate custody of Bella and her puppies. Dr. Harper, maintaining her professional composure, presented medical evidence of long-term neglect predating the fire. X-rays revealed old fractures that had healed improperly, and blood tests indicated historical malnutrition. "These animals are my property," Mark insisted, his voice carrying an edge of barely controlled anger. "I have every right to take them home today." Rachel countered swiftly, "Your claimed ownership doesn't override medical necessity or evidence of abuse. We're prepared to file for an emergency protective order." The tension in the room escalated as Mark's lawyer threatened legal action against the hospital for withholding property. Dr. Harper stood her ground, supported by Emily and Rachel, citing medical ethics and animal welfare regulations. The confrontation drew the attention of hospital staff and visitors, who gathered outside the office, their presence a silent show of support for Bella. Old Joe, who had become a regular visitor during Bella's recovery, chose that moment to make an appearance. Despite his shabby appearance, his military bearing commanded attention as he stepped forward to share his observations of Bella's life at Mark's property. His detailed account of neglect and mistreatment added another layer to the growing case against Mark. The situation reached a turning point when local animal control officer Steve Burke arrived with a thick folder of his own. Years of documented complaints about Mark's property, including anonymous tips and photographic evidence, suddenly became part of the official record. Though many of the complaints had been dismissed due to lack of evidence or jurisdiction, the pattern they revealed was undeniable. Mark's reaction to this mounting evidence was telling. His confident demeanor cracked slightly as Officer Burke detailed the history of investigations. The lawyer quickly attempted to steer the conversation back to property rights, but the damage was done. The hospital's waiting room had become an impromptu courtroom, with Bella's fate hanging in the balance. Rachel seized the momentum, announcing her intention to file for emergency custody on behalf of the hospital. She cited the documented abuse, the current medical needs, and the extraordinary circumstances of the rescue. The legal terminology flew back and forth, but at the heart of the matter was a simple truth: Bella's life and well-being were at stake. The news media, which had been following Bella's story since the dramatic rescue, caught wind of the legal dispute. Michael Chen from the Maple Grove Gazette arrived just in time to witness Mark's angry departure, his threats of legal retribution echoing through the hospital corridors. The story was quickly evolving from a simple rescue tale to something more complex and compelling. Emily found herself at the center of a growing movement. The hospital's waiting room became a makeshift headquarters for Bella's supporters, with volunteers organizing shifts to ensure someone was always present in case Mark returned. Local animal rights groups offered their resources and expertise, while social media buzzed with updates and calls for support. Rachel worked tirelessly to prepare the emergency custody filing, knowing they needed to act quickly before Mark could leverage his connections in the local court system. She built her case around three main points: the documented history of neglect, the immediate medical needs of Bella and her puppies, and the extraordinary circumstances of their rescue. The first legal victory came late that evening when Judge Patricia Montgomery signed the emergency protective order. It was a temporary measure, but it meant Bella and her puppies would remain at the hospital under Dr. Harper's care until a full hearing could be scheduled. The small group gathered in the hospital celebrated quietly, aware that this was just the beginning of a longer battle. As Emily sat with Bella that night, gently stroking her healing fur, she realized how much had changed in just a few weeks. What had started as a dramatic rescue had evolved into a fight for justice that would test her in ways she never expected. The legal battle ahead would require every bit of courage and determination she possessed, but looking into Bella's trusting eyes, she knew it was worth it. Just as the legal battle was gaining momentum, a series of medical emergencies threatened to derail everything. It began with Scout, whose seemingly stable condition took a dramatic turn for the worse. Dr. Harper discovered that the smoke damage to his lungs was more severe than initially assessed, leading to a dangerous secondary infection. The tiny puppy's temperature spiked dangerously high one evening, his small body shaking with fever. The antibiotics that had been working suddenly seemed ineffective, and his breathing became increasingly labored. Dr. Harper and her team worked through the night, trying desperately to stabilize his condition while Bella watched anxiously, refusing to leave her smallest pup's side. "His immune system is compromised," Dr. Harper explained to Emily, her voice heavy with concern. The combination of smoke inhalation, early separation from his mother during the fire, and his naturally smaller size, it's all working against him. Bella's own condition deteriorated as she neglected her own recovery to stay with Scout. Her burns, which had been healing well, showed signs of infection. The stress and anxiety of potentially losing her puppy manifested in decreased appetite and restlessness, further compromising her recovery. The strong mother who had braved the flames now seemed to be fading before their eyes. The financial burden of intensive care for both Bella and Scout began to mount. The hospital's resources were stretched thin, and insurance complications arose due to the ongoing custody dispute. Mark's lawyer had effectively frozen any potential funding by challenging the hospital's right to make medical decisions for the animals. Emily found herself facing impossible choices. Her own savings were quickly depleting as she tried to cover the mounting medical costs while taking unpaid leave from the fire department to stay close to Bella and Scout. The local community had been generous with donations, but the expensive antibiotics and specialized treatments required for Scout were pushing the limits of available resources. The other puppies, while physically healthier, showed signs of emotional distress as they picked up on their mother's anxiety. They became listless and withdrawn, their usually playful nature subdued. Dr. Harper explained that this psychological response in such young puppies could have long-term implications for their development. A breakthrough came when Dr. Harper discovered a specialist in veterinary pulmonology who had experience treating smoke inhalation in young animals. However, the consultation and treatment would require transferring Scout to a facility 2 hours away. The decision to separate him from Bella seemed cruel, yet it might be his only chance for survival. The night before the planned transfer, Bella's maternal instincts led to a heart-wrenching scene. Sensing the impending separation, she attempted to move Scout, gently picking him up despite her own pain. The medical staff found her trying to hide with him in a corner of the treatment room, her body curled protectively around his tiny form. Emily spent that night on the floor beside them, talking softly to Bella, trying to explain what was happening. Though the dog couldn't understand the words, she seemed to respond to Emily's gentle tone and presence. By morning, Bella allowed the medical team to prepare Scout for transfer, though her eyes never left her smallest pup. The separation proved almost unbearable. Bella's distress manifested in a spike in blood pressure and increased heart rate. She refused food and became agitated, trying to search for Scout. The other puppies seemed to sense their mother's anguish, their own recovery regressing as they picked up on her emotional state. Dr. Harper implemented an emergency treatment plan for Bella, combining physical therapy for her burns with medication to manage her anxiety. Emily set up video calls with the specialist hospital, allowing Bella to see and hear Scout during his treatments. Though a small comfort, it seemed to help calm the distraught mother. Scout's fight for survival at the specialist facility became a symbol of hope for everyone involved in Bella's case. Regular updates from the pulmonologist showed small but steady improvements, each positive report lifting the spirits of those gathered at Maple Grove Animal Hospital. The local media followed the story closely, with Michael Chin writing daily updates that kept the community engaged and supportive. The crisis reached its peak when Scout developed complications from his treatment. The specialist called late one night, warning that the next 24 hours would be critical. Emily watched as Bella, despite her own injuries, became increasingly agitated, as if sensing her puppy's distress from miles away. In that darkest moment, the community's support proved invaluable. A local pilot offered his private plane to fly Dr. Harper to the specialist facility, while others organized a blood drive for canine donors. The hospital staff worked overtime monitoring Bella and the other puppies while coordinating with the specialist team. Through it all, Emily remained the constant presence that seemed to keep Bella going. She slept at the hospital, her firefighting gear always ready nearby in case of an emergency call, dividing her time between supporting Bella and coordinating the growing network of volunteers and supporters. As Bella and Scout fought their medical battles, a different kind of war erupted in the court of public opinion. Mark Hamilton, realizing he was losing the legal momentum, launched a sophisticated PR campaign to sway community sentiment. He hired Crisis Management Associates, a local firm specializing in reputation rehabilitation, to reshape his narrative. The first salvo came in the form of a full-page advertisement in the Maple Grove Gazette, presenting Mark as a misunderstood animal lover whose reputation was being unfairly tarnished. The ad featured carefully selected photos of his other dogs, all seemingly well cared for, and included testimonials from paid character witnesses about his supposed dedication to animal welfare. "I've known Mark Hamilton for 15 years, one testimonial read. He's always been passionate about dogs. This whole situation is being blown out of proportion by overzealous activists." Emily and her supporters were caught off guard by the scale and sophistication of Mark's PR offensive. Local television stations, influenced by Mark's connections and advertising dollars, began running balanced coverage that portrayed the custody battle as a simple misunderstanding rather than a case of animal abuse. The hospital staff found themselves under increasing scrutiny. Anonymous complaints were filed questioning their medical decisions, and rumors began circulating about their motivations for keeping Bella. Dr. Harper faced particular criticism, with suggestions that she was prolonging Bella's treatment unnecessarily to generate publicity and donations. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like Justice for Bella competing against Stop the Steal, referring to Mark's claim that his property was being stolen. Mark's supporters, many of them local business owners who benefited from his connections, began speaking out against Emily and the hospital. Michael Chin, the young reporter who had been covering Bella's story from the beginning, found himself under pressure to balance his coverage. His editor, mindful of advertising revenues, suggested running a feature on Mark's side of the story. Chin faced a moral dilemma: maintain his integrity or bow to editorial pressure. Emily's position at the fire department became complicated. Anonymous complaints were filed about her unauthorized rescue of Bella during the forest fire. Though her actions had been heroic, bureaucratic questions arose about protocol violations and chain-of-command issues. Captain Richards, initially supportive, began distancing himself as department politics intensified. The turning point in the public opinion battle came from an unexpected source. Old Joe, the homeless veteran who had been watching over Bella, had been keeping a detailed journal of his observations. His military training had taught him the importance of documentation, and his notebooks contained dates, times, and specific incidents of neglect at Mark's property. Rachel Mitchell, recognizing the potential impact of Joe's evidence, worked with him to present his story to the public. The contrast couldn't have been starker: a wealthy businessman accused of animal abuse versus a homeless veteran who shared his meager resources to help a suffering dog. Local children who had been following Bella's story began their own campaign. They organized a Pennies for Puppies drive at their schools, making posters and sharing stories about their own pets. Their innocent but powerful advocacy cut through the sophisticated PR messaging, touching hearts in a way that professional campaigns couldn't. The hospital's waiting room became a hub of grassroots activism. Volunteers organized shifts to maintain a presence, coordinate donations, and share updates about Bella and Scout's conditions. They created a wall of photos and stories documenting Bella's journey from the fire to recovery, making the abstract legal battle deeply personal for visitors. Mark's PR campaign suffered a significant blow when one of his former employees came forward. Sarah, a kennel worker who had quit months earlier, shared photos she had secretly taken of the conditions at his breeding facility. The images, showing neglected dogs in filthy conditions, went viral on social media, overwhelming Mark's carefully crafted narrative. The community began to divide along clear lines. Local businesses had to choose sides, with some displaying "We Stand with Bella" signs while others maintained their support for Mark. The controversy affected relationships, business partnerships, and even church congregations as people grappled with the moral implications of the case. Through it all, Emily maintained her focus on Bella's recovery. She refused to engage in public attacks on Mark, instead letting the evidence and Bella's obvious fear of him speak for themselves. Her quiet dedication and genuine concern for Bella's welfare provided a stark contrast to Mark's expensive PR campaign. As public opinion shifted, Mark's tactics became more desperate. He began suggesting that Emily and the hospital were profiting from donations, prompting them to release detailed financial records showing all funds were going directly to medical care. His attempts to discredit them only served to highlight the transparency of Bella's supporters versus his own murky dealings. The first day of formal court proceedings arrived with a tension that filled every corner of the Maple Grove County Courthouse. Rachel Mitchell arrived early, her arms laden with carefully organized evidence folders, each documenting a different aspect of Bella's case. Despite her relative inexperience, her preparation was meticulous, driven by the knowledge that she was fighting for more than just one dog and her puppies. Judge Patricia Montgomery's courtroom fell silent as she entered, her reputation for strict adherence to procedure preceding her. The judge's first action was to review the emergency protective order that had kept Bella at the hospital. Mark's legal team, led by the imposing Thomas Sterling, immediately moved to have it dismissed, arguing that it violated their client's property rights. "Your Honor," Sterling began, his voice carrying the confidence of decades in corporate law, "this case is fundamentally about property rights. Mr. Hamilton has provided clear documentation of ownership, and the hospital's continued detention of his property is causing significant financial damage." Rachel rose to counter, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Your Honor, this case transcends simple property law. We have substantial evidence of systematic abuse and neglect documented by both medical professionals and law enforcement. The emergency order was necessary to protect living beings from imminent harm." The first breakthrough came during Officer Steve Burke's testimony. His years of carefully maintained records painted a damning picture of conditions at Mark's property. Photos, complaint records, and detailed notes created a timeline of neglect that couldn't be easily dismissed. When questioned about why more action hadn't been taken earlier, Burke's frustration was evident as he described the jurisdictional limitations and lack of resources that had hampered investigations. Dr. Harper's medical testimony proved equally compelling. Armed with X-rays, blood work results, and detailed documentation of Bella's injuries, both old and new, she methodically outlined the physical evidence of long-term abuse. Her professional demeanor never wavered, even under aggressive cross-examination by Sterling. "These injuries," Dr. Harper explained, pointing to bone scan images, "show multiple historical fractures that healed without proper medical attention. The pattern and aging of these injuries are consistent with prolonged physical abuse, not accidental trauma." The testimony that captivated the courtroom came from Old Joe. Despite his shabby appearance and obvious discomfort in formal settings, his military bearing commanded respect as he described his observations of Bella's life at Mark's property. His detailed journal entries, written with military precision, provided dates, times, and specific incidents that corroborated other evidence. "I saw her every day for months," Joe testified, his voice rough with emotion. "She'd try to nurse her puppies through the fence, barely had enough food for herself. When it rained, there was no shelter. I gave her what I could, but it wasn't enough." Mark's defense strategy began to unravel when Rachel introduced evidence from Sarah, the former kennel worker. Her photographs and testimony about conditions at the breeding facility directly contradicted Mark's claims of providing proper care. The documentation of multiple violations of breeding regulations and health codes was difficult to dismiss. A crucial moment came when Rachel called Mrs. Anderson, Bella's original owner, to testify. The elderly woman's account of how Mark had manipulated her into giving up Bella revealed a pattern of deception that extended beyond animal abuse. Her testimony about Bella's early life and the circumstances of her transfer to Mark's ownership challenged the validity of his ownership documents. The legal battle took an unexpected turn when Rachel introduced evidence linking Mark to a larger network of illegal breeding operations. Financial records uncovered through careful investigation showed suspicious patterns of transactions and connections to known puppy mills. This evidence elevated the case from a simple custody dispute to a potential criminal investigation. Mark's testimony in his own defense proved disastrous. Under Rachel's careful questioning, his carefully constructed facade began to crack. His answers became evasive, his temper flared, and his previous claims of being a responsible pet owner fell apart under scrutiny. The contrast between his polished appearance and the reality of his actions became impossible to ignore. Throughout the proceedings, Emily maintained a quiet presence in the courtroom, her focus never wavering from the ultimate goal of protecting Bella and her puppies. Her own testimony about the rescue and subsequent events was powerful in its simplicity and genuine concern for the animal's welfare. The legal arguments expanded beyond individual property rights to address broader questions of animal welfare and the responsibilities of pet ownership. Rachel's passionate closing argument emphasized the need to recognize animals as more than mere property, citing evolving legal precedents and changing societal attitudes. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became increasingly crowded with supporters, media, and interested parties from both sides. The case was clearly touching on issues that resonated beyond the immediate dispute, raising questions about animal rights, property law, and the obligations of pet ownership. While the legal battle raged in the courthouse, Bella's physical and emotional recovery continued at the animal hospital under Dr. Harper's watchful care. The journey was far from smooth, with each step forward often followed by unexpected challenges. The burns that covered much of Bella's body required daily treatment, a painful process that tested both her resilience and the medical team's determination. Dr. Harper developed a comprehensive rehabilitation plan that combined traditional medical treatment with innovative therapy approaches. Physical therapy sessions began gently, focusing first on maintaining mobility in Bella's injured limbs. The burns on her paws made walking extremely painful, but Bella showed remarkable determination, especially when encouraged by the presence of her puppies. Recovery isn't just about healing the physical wounds, Dr. Harper explained to Emily during one of their daily consultations. The psychological trauma Bella experienced, both from the fire and her previous abuse, requires just as much attention as her burns. Scout's return from the specialist facility marked a turning point in Bella's recovery. The reunion between mother and puppy was emotional for everyone who witnessed it. Despite her own pain, Bella immediately began gently grooming Scout, her natural maternal instincts helping both of them heal. The smallest puppy's presence seemed to give Bella renewed purpose and strength. The physical therapy sessions grew more challenging as Bella's burns began to heal. Jenny Thompson, the young nurse who had developed a special bond with Bella, created an obstacle course that encouraged the dog to move in ways that prevented scar tissue from limiting her mobility. The other puppies would often join these sessions, their playful energy motivating their mother to push through the pain. Emotional healing proved to be just as crucial as physical rehabilitation. Bella showed signs of anxiety whenever male visitors entered her room, a clear indication of her traumatic experiences with Mark. The hospital staff worked to create positive associations, with male employees like Dave Wilson spending time simply sitting quietly in her presence, offering treats and gentle words. The other puppies played a crucial role in their mother's recovery. Their natural playfulness and resilience provided constant encouragement. Scout, though still the smallest, became particularly attuned to his mother's moods. He would often curl up next to her during difficult therapy sessions, his presence seeming to give her strength. Emily's constant presence became another cornerstone of Bella's recovery. She arranged her firefighting shifts to spend maximum time at the hospital, often sleeping in a chair beside Bella's bed. The bond between them deepened as they faced each challenge together, from painful dressing changes to the first tentative steps outside the hospital room. Dr. Harper's innovative approach included music therapy sessions, noticing that certain classical pieces seemed to calm both Bella and her puppies during treatment. The hospital's atmosphere changed as soft piano music became a regular feature, creating a more soothing environment for all the patients. Setbacks were inevitable. An infection in one of Bella's worst burns required aggressive antibiotic treatment, temporarily halting her physical therapy. During this period, her mood darkened and she became withdrawn. It took the combined efforts of the medical team, Emily, and especially Scout's gentle encouragement to help her through this difficult phase. The community's support manifested in practical ways that aided recovery. Local children made recordings of themselves reading stories, which were played during Bella's treatment sessions. A retired massage therapist volunteered her services, teaching the staff specialized techniques for managing scar tissue and promoting healing. As weeks passed, small victories accumulated. Bella's first unassisted walk in the hospital garden was celebrated by staff and volunteers alike. The sight of her leading her puppies, albeit slowly and carefully, around the enclosed space brought tears to many eyes. These moments of triumph helped balance the ongoing challenges of recovery. The psychological aspects of rehabilitation became more apparent as Bella's physical condition improved. She showed signs of hypervigilance, particularly during thunderstorms that reminded her of the fire. The medical team developed protocols for these situations, ensuring someone was always available to provide comfort and reassurance. Scout's own recovery paralleled his mother's, though his challenges were different. His lung function gradually improved, but he remained smaller than his siblings. However, what he lacked in size he made up for in spirit, often being the first to encourage Bella to try new therapy exercises. Progress was measured in small increments: a longer walk each day, less hesitation around new people, better sleep patterns, and increased appetite. Dr. Harper maintained detailed records of these improvements, knowing they might prove crucial in the ongoing legal battle for Bella's future. The ripple effects of Bella's story spread through Maple Grove in unexpected ways, transforming a small-town animal rescue case into a catalyst for community change. What began as a simple response to a medical emergency evolved into a grassroots movement that touched every corner of the community. Martha Ramirez's pet supply store became an unofficial headquarters for volunteer coordination. The small shop's bulletin board, once filled with lost pet posters and dog walking advertisements, now displayed organized schedules for hospital visits, fundraising events, and community education programs. Local businesses began displaying "We Support Bella" signs in their windows, each one representing a commitment to animal welfare that went beyond mere sentiment. The local school system embraced the movement in their own way. Teachers incorporated Bella's story into their lessons, using it to teach empathy and civic responsibility. Children wrote essays about animal welfare, created artwork depicting Bella's rescue, and organized their own fundraising projects. The Pennies for Puppies campaign, started by a third-grade class, spread to schools across the district. "These children aren't just raising money," explained Sarah Thompson, a local elementary school teacher. "They're learning about compassion, responsibility, and the power of community action." Bella's story has given them a tangible way to understand these abstract concepts. The homeless community, inspired by Old Joe's role in Bella's story, found new purpose and recognition. Local shelters reported increased donations and volunteer support as people began to understand the connection between human and animal welfare. Old Joe himself became an unlikely advocate, his military bearing and straightforward manner lending credibility to the cause. Local law enforcement began reviewing their procedures for handling animal abuse cases. Officer Burke's testimony about the challenges of investigating animal welfare complaints led to proposals for additional training and resources. The police department established a dedicated animal welfare unit with increased funding for investigations and enforcement. The medical community also felt the impact. Dr. Harper's innovative approach to Bella's treatment attracted attention from veterinary professionals across the region. The hospital began hosting workshops on trauma-informed veterinary care, sharing lessons learned from Bella's case with other medical professionals. Religious organizations joined the movement in their own way. Several local churches began including pet blessings in their services, while others organized discussions about stewardship and responsibility toward animals. The Interfaith Council issued a joint statement supporting animal welfare initiatives, citing moral and ethical obligations to protect vulnerable creatures. The media landscape shifted as well. Michael Chin's thoughtful coverage of Bella's story set a new standard for reporting on animal welfare issues. Other journalists began investigating similar cases, uncovering patterns of abuse and neglect that had previously gone unreported. The Maple Grove Gazette dedicated a weekly column to animal welfare issues, featuring success stories and educational content. Local government couldn't ignore the groundswell of public interest. The city council began reviewing animal welfare ordinances, considering stronger regulations for breeding facilities and increased penalties for abuse. Public meetings about these proposals drew record attendance, with citizens from all walks of life sharing their views and experiences. The business community adapted to the changing atmosphere. Local veterinarians began offering sliding-scale payment options for low-income pet owners. Pet-friendly policies became more common in rental properties, and some employers even started offering pet insurance as part of their benefits packages. Youth organizations developed new programs focused on animal welfare. The local scout troops created an animal care merit badge, while the 4-H Club expanded its programs to include companion animal care alongside traditional livestock projects. These initiatives helped create a new generation of informed and compassionate pet owners. The impact extended to emergency services as well. Inspired by Emily's rescue of Bella, the fire department developed new protocols for handling animals in emergency situations. They acquired specialized equipment for pet rescue and began including animal welfare considerations in their training programs. Perhaps most significantly, the community's response to Bella's case demonstrated the power of united action. People who might never have spoken to each other found common ground in their concern for animals. Social barriers broke down as wealthy professionals worked alongside homeless individuals in volunteer programs, all united by their desire to help. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Some business owners complained about increased regulations, while others worried about the costs of implementing new animal welfare standards. Yet the overwhelming sentiment was one of positive change, with most residents recognizing that improving animal welfare benefited the entire community. As the legal proceedings threatened to expose his entire operation, Mark Hamilton's actions took an increasingly desperate turn. The carefully maintained facade of a respectable businessman began to crack under the pressure, revealing the lengths he would go to maintain control over Bella and protect his darker enterprises. The first incident occurred late one night at the animal hospital. Security cameras captured two masked figures attempting to gain access through a rear entrance. Though they fled when the alarm sounded, their target was clear. They had headed directly toward Bella's ward. Officer Burke's investigation revealed tire tracks matching Mark's distinctive CV, though nothing could be proven conclusively. "This isn't just about one dog anymore," Rachel explained to Emily the next morning. "Mark's fighting to keep his entire operation from being exposed. That makes him desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." Mark's tactics became more sophisticated. He hired private investigators to follow Emily and Dr. Harper, looking for anything that could discredit them. Photos of Emily's occasional visits to a local bar after difficult shifts appeared on social media, accompanied by suggestions that she was unfit to care for animals. Dr. Harper's divorce status and long working hours were used to paint her as unstable and obsessed with her work. The pressure extended to witnesses preparing to testify against Mark. Sarah, his former employee, found her current job mysteriously threatened. Old Joe reported being approached by strangers offering money to adjust his testimony. Even Mrs. Anderson received anonymous calls suggesting her memory of events might be confused. Mark's legal team expanded to include Carter Williams, a lawyer known for his aggressive witness intimidation tactics. During pre-trial depositions, Williams subjected witnesses to grueling sessions designed to break their resolve. His questioning of Old Joe was particularly brutal, attempting to use the veteran's homeless status and past struggles with PTSD to discredit his testimony. The situation escalated when Scout disappeared during a short supervised outdoor session at the hospital. The puppy was found hours later, cold and frightened but unharmed, in a nearby dumpster. Though no direct connection to Mark could be proven, the message was clear: no one involved in the case was safe. Mark began appearing at Emily's fire station ostensibly to file complaints about her conduct during the forest rescue. His presence disrupted operations and created tension among her colleagues. Captain Richards, already uncomfortable with the publicity surrounding the case, began suggesting that Emily take an extended leave of absence. The campaign to discredit the hospital intensified. Anonymous complaints to the veterinary board questioned Dr. Harper's medical decisions. False reviews appeared online claiming negligence and financial misconduct. Mark's supporters began picketing outside, carrying signs that questioned the hospital's motives and integrity. A more insidious attack came through the local business community. Mark used his connections to pressure suppliers who worked with the hospital, suggesting that continuing to support Dr. Harper's facility might be bad for business. Several longtime vendors reluctantly withdrew their services, creating logistical challenges for Bella's ongoing care. The psychological warfare extended to Emily's personal life. Her apartment building received anonymous complaints about noise and disturbances, though she was rarely home. Her car was vandalized, and strange cars began following her during her commute. The constant pressure began to take its toll, affecting her sleep and concentration. Rachel discovered that Mark had hired a professional crisis management team to create false social media accounts. These accounts spread manufactured stories about Emily's supposed history of mental instability and Dr. Harper's alleged medical misconduct. The campaign was sophisticated enough to briefly sway public opinion. The breaking point came when Mark attempted to manipulate the legal system itself. Evidence emerged that he had attempted to bribe a clerk to lose key documentation in Bella's case. The attempt failed, but it revealed the extent to which he would go to maintain control. Through it all, Bella remained the center of the storm. Her recovery continued, though the stress of the situation affected her progress. She became more protective of her puppies, especially Scout, and showed increasing anxiety during medical treatments. The staff worked to shield her from the chaos, but animals have a way of sensing tension. Mark's desperate actions began to backfire as evidence of his intimidation tactics mounted. Each attempt to discredit Emily and her supporters only added to the growing body of evidence against him. His reputation, once sterling in the business community, crumbled as his true nature became apparent. The mounting pressure of Bella's case began taking a severe toll on everyone involved, particularly Emily Carter. Her decision to fight for Bella meant sacrificing nearly everything she had worked for. The first major blow came when Captain Richards called her into his office on a quiet Monday morning. "You've become a liability to the department," he said, his voice carrying a mix of regret and frustration. "The media attention, the controversy, it's affecting morale and public trust. We need you to take an indefinite leave of absence." Emily's firefighting career, the dream she had pursued since childhood, now hung by a thread. The leave was unpaid, cutting off her primary source of income just when the legal bills were mounting. Her savings, already strained by contributing to Bella's medical care, began to disappear rapidly. Dr. Harper faced her own professional challenges. The constant attacks on her credibility and the hospital's integrity began affecting business. Several long-term clients, uncomfortable with the controversy, quietly transferred their pets to other facilities. The hospital's insurance company threatened to cancel their coverage, citing the increased risk from Mark's legal threats. "I won't compromise on Bella's care," Dr. Harper insisted during a tense board meeting. "If that means risking everything I've built here, so be it." Her dedication came at a personal cost. She hadn't taken a day off in months, and her already strained relationship with her teenage daughter grew more distant. Rachel Mitchell's commitment to the case threatened her fledgling legal career. Senior partners at the legal aid office questioned the resources being devoted to an animal welfare case. Her pro bono work for Bella meant turning down paying clients, and her reputation for taking on controversial cases made larger firms hesitant to consider her for positions. The financial strain began affecting basic necessities. Emily downsized to a smaller apartment, sold her car, and took odd jobs during her suspension from the fire department. The long hours at the hospital combined with part-time work left her exhausted, yet she refused to reduce her time with Bella. Old Joe, despite his own precarious situation, shared what little he had to help with Bella's care. His testimony against Mark cost him access to his usual sleeping spots near the industrial district, forcing him to move further from the hospital. Still, he walked miles each day to check on Bella, his military discipline unwavering. The hospital staff made their own sacrifices. Jenny Thompson worked double shifts to cover staffing shortages, while Dave Wilson used his mechanical skills to repair equipment they could no longer afford to replace. They took pay cuts to keep the hospital operating, understanding that Bella's care couldn't be compromised. Personal relationships suffered under the strain. Emily's few dating attempts ended quickly when potential partners realized the extent of her commitment to Bella's case. Dr. Harper's ex-husband used the situation to petition for full custody of their daughter, citing her obsessive dedication to work. The emotional toll became increasingly evident. Emily began experiencing anxiety attacks, particularly after encounters with Mark or his supporters. The constant stress affected her sleep, and dark circles under her eyes became a permanent feature. Yet she refused to step back, knowing that Bella's future depended on her perseverance. Scout's ongoing health issues required specialized care that stretched the hospital's resources to the breaking point. Dr. Harper spent countless unpaid hours researching alternative treatments, often sleeping in her office to monitor his progress. The tiny puppy's fighting spirit inspired them all to keep going, despite the mounting personal costs. The community's support, though strong, couldn't fully offset the financial burden. Fundraisers and donations helped with Bella's medical expenses, but the personal toll on her defenders continued to mount. Emily began skipping meals to save money, while Rachel worked on legal briefs by candlelight to reduce her electricity bills. Martha Ramirez's pet supply store, which had become a hub for Bella's supporters, saw business decline as Mark's allies organized a boycott. She refused to back down, converting part of her store into a donation center for animal welfare causes, even as her own financial situation grew precarious. The strain began showing in small ways: missed bill payments, postponed medical appointments, delayed car repairs. Yet none of Bella's defenders considered giving up. Each sacrifice seemed worth it when they saw her progress, watched her care for her puppies, or witnessed moments of joy during her recovery. The local controversy surrounding Bella's case exploded onto the national stage when a popular morning show picked up the story. Overnight, Maple Grove became the focal point of a heated debate about animal rights and property law. News vans lined the streets outside the animal hospital, while reporters sought interviews with anyone connected to the case. "Heroic firefighter battles millionaire for rescued dog," read one headline. Another countered with "property rights under attack in small-town America." The nuanced reality of Bella's situation became lost in the sensationalized coverage as media outlets pushed competing narratives that suited their audiences. Michael Chen's thoughtful local coverage found itself competing with aggressive national reporters who cared more about controversy than accuracy. Some painted Emily as a saint-like figure sacrificing everything for animal welfare, while others portrayed her as an unstable activist threatening traditional property rights. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. Social media amplified the divide. Hashtags like Team Bella and Stand With Mark trended nationally, while online debates grew increasingly heated. Videos of Bella's recovery went viral, along with clips of Mark's supporters protesting outside the hospital. Every development in the case sparked new waves of online controversy. Celebrity involvement added another layer of complexity. A well-known actress who had previously rescued dogs from puppy mills spoke out in support of Bella, offering to cover her medical expenses. In response, a conservative talk show host backed Mark, framing the case as an attack on private property rights. The hospital became a pilgrimage site for animal rights activists from across the country. Well-meaning supporters arrived daily, sometimes overwhelming the facility's capacity to handle visitors. Doctor. Harper struggled to maintain a calm environment for her patients while managing the constant stream of media requests and activist interventions. National animal welfare organizations began taking sides, seeing Bella's case as a potential precedent setter. Their involvement brought needed resources but also increased pressure on the local court system. Judge Montgomery found her normally quiet courtroom filled with observers and media representatives from around the country. The pressure intensified when a major cable news network announced plans for a primetime special about the case. Both Emily and Mark were offered substantial compensation for exclusive interviews. Emily declined, preferring to let the evidence speak for itself, while Mark seized the opportunity to present his version of events to a national audience. Local politicians found themselves drawn into the controversy. The mayor, initially hesitant to take sides, faced mounting pressure to make a public statement. City council meetings became forums for heated debates about animal welfare regulations, with both sides presenting petitions and demanding action. The business community split along increasingly bitter lines. Companies that supported Emily faced boycotts from Mark's allies, while those backing Mark saw their Yelp ratings plummet under coordinated attacks from animal rights activists. The economic impact of the divide began affecting the entire town. Religious leaders entered the fray, offering competing interpretations of humanity's responsibility toward animals. The local ministerial alliance fractured over the issue, with some churches hosting prayer vigils for Bella while others defended traditional views of property rights from their pulpits. Academic experts began weighing in with legal analyses and ethical arguments. Law professors published opinion pieces examining the implications for property law, while veterinary schools used Bella's case to discuss professional ethics. The local controversy had become a national conversation about the evolving relationship between humans and animals. Through it all, Bella remained oblivious to her role as a symbol in a larger cultural battle. Her focus stayed on her recovery and her puppies, particularly Scout, whose health continued to require special attention. The medical team worked to shield her from the chaos, creating a peaceful space within the eye of the media storm. Emily found herself struggling to maintain perspective amid the national attention. Her simple desire to help an injured animal had evolved into something far bigger than she had ever imagined. The weight of representing a cause while staying true to her original purpose of protecting Bella became increasingly challenging. The intensity of public interest showed no signs of diminishing as the case approached its critical phases. Each new development brought fresh waves of media coverage and social media debate, while the fundamental questions about animal welfare versus property rights remained unresolved. Just as Bella's recovery seemed to be progressing steadily, a series of catastrophic medical complications threatened to unravel everything. It began with Scout, whose fragile immune system suddenly failed to fight off a secondary infection. His temperature spiked dangerously high one night, sending the hospital into crisis mode. "His body is shutting down," Dr. Harper explained to Emily, her voice tight with concern. "The smoke damage to his lungs made him vulnerable, and now the infection has spread to his bloodstream." The tiny puppy lay motionless in his oxygen tent, his breathing shallow and labored, while Bella paced anxiously nearby. The situation deteriorated rapidly as Bella's own health took a dramatic turn for the worse. The stress of Scout's condition, combined with her still healing burns, triggered a severe autoimmune response. Her body began attacking its own healing tissues, reopening wounds that had finally started to close. Dr. Harper and her team worked around the clock, fighting to save both mother and puppy. The other puppies, sensing the crisis, became withdrawn and listless. The hospital's atmosphere grew heavy with tension as staff members monitored vital signs and administered emergency treatments. Emily found herself torn between mother and pup, splitting her time between their separate intensive care units. She watched helplessly as Bella's hard-won progress reversed, the proud mother who had braved fire to save her puppies now struggling to stand. Scout's condition continued to deteriorate despite aggressive antibiotic treatment. The financial strain of intensive care threatened to overwhelm the hospital's resources. Insurance complications, exacerbated by Mark's ongoing legal challenges, left Dr. Harper struggling to maintain the level of care both patients desperately needed. The community's fundraising efforts, while generous, couldn't keep pace with the mounting medical bills. Bella's psychological state began to mirror her physical decline. She refused food, growing agitated whenever separated from Scout for treatment. Her anxiety manifested in trembling episodes that further complicated her recovery. The strong spirit that had sustained her through the fire and subsequent challenges seemed to be fading. The crisis reached its peak when Scout suffered a seizure in the middle of the night. The emergency team's response was immediate, but the tiny puppy's system had been pushed beyond its limits. For several terrifying minutes they fought to stabilize him while Bella, despite her own weakness, howled in distress from her ward. The other puppies, who had been progressing well in their development, showed signs of emotional trauma from the ongoing crisis. Their playful nature disappeared, replaced by nervous behavior and separation anxiety. The bond between the siblings, usually a source of strength, became tinged with fear. Emily's own physical and emotional reserves began to crumble under the strain. Sleeping in uncomfortable hospital chairs and skipping meals had left her exhausted and vulnerable. The sight of both Bella and Scout suffering, despite everyone's best efforts, threatened to break her spirit. Dr. Harper faced her own crisis of confidence as traditional treatments failed to produce results. Her years of experience seemed inadequate in the face of such complex medical challenges. She began researching experimental treatments, knowing that time was running out for both patients. The hospital staff, already stretched thin by the demands of high-profile patients, struggled to maintain their professional composure. Jenny Thompson was found crying in the supply closet after a particularly difficult night shift, while Dave Wilson's usually cheerful demeanor gave way to grim determination. News of the medical crisis spread quickly through the community, adding another layer of pressure to an already tense situation. Well-meaning supporters gathered outside the hospital, holding vigils that sometimes disrupted the peace Bella and Scout desperately needed for recovery. Through it all, the bond between mother and puppy remained unbroken. Even in their weakened states, they responded to each other's presence. Staff members would sometimes find Bella attempting to drag herself toward Scout's ward, while the puppy's vital signs showed slight improvement whenever he could hear his mother's voice. As days turned into weeks, the situation remained precarious. Every small improvement was followed by new complications, creating a roller coaster of hope and despair for everyone involved in their care. The question wasn't just whether they would survive, but whether they would ever fully recover from this devastating setback. The legal setback came with devastating swiftness. During an emergency hearing triggered by Mark's legal team, Judge Montgomery faced an impossible decision. With Bella and Scout's conditions deteriorating, Mark's lawyers argued that their decline proved the hospital was unfit to provide adequate care. Your Honor, Thomas Sterling argued, his voice dripping with manufactured concern, these animals are clearly suffering under the current arrangement. Mr. Hamilton has arranged for their transfer to a state-of-the-art veterinary facility in Chicago. Every day we delay puts their lives at further risk. But Rachel fought back passionately, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The medical crisis had forced Dr. Harper to miss the hearing, unable to leave her critical patients. Her written testimony about the complex nature of Bella's treatment seemed inadequate against Sterling's polished presentation of alternative care options. The judge's interim ruling sent shockwaves through the hospital. Temporary custody would be transferred to Mark pending a full hearing. The order specified that Bella and her puppies must be moved within 48 hours to the facility of Mark's choosing. The only concession was that they must remain together as a family unit. Emily's world crumbled further when Captain Richards called an emergency meeting at the fire station. The department can't afford to be associated with this controversy any longer, he explained, unable to meet her eyes. We're terminating your position, effective immediately. The news of Emily's firing spread quickly through Maple Grove. The official reason cited conduct unbecoming and unauthorized decisions during emergency operations, referring to her rescue of Bella during the forest fire. The real message was clear: standing up against powerful interests had consequences. Dr. Harper faced her own professional crisis. The veterinary board, responding to complaints filed by Mark's supporters, launched an investigation into her treatment protocols. Though baseless, the investigation cast a shadow over her reputation and threatened her medical license. The hospital's board of directors, under pressure from their insurance company, began distancing themselves from the case. Several members suggested that continuing to fight for Bella was not in the institution's best interests. The possibility of losing their insurance coverage loomed over every decision. Rachel's legal aid office also buckled under the pressure. Her supervisor called her in for a difficult conversation about resource allocation and priorities. The message was clear: either drop Bella's case or find new employment. The young lawyer's dedication to animal welfare had become a liability to her career. The community's reaction to the legal defeat revealed deep divisions. Some supporters turned their anger toward Emily and Dr. Harper, suggesting they had somehow mishandled the case. Others began to quietly remove their "We Stand with Bella" signs, fearing economic repercussions from Mark's allies. Mark's victory celebration at the country club drove home the power imbalance. Local business leaders and politicians who had previously stayed neutral suddenly appeared at his side, offering congratulations. The message was clear: money and influence still carried more weight than justice and compassion. The logistics of transferring Bella and her puppies presented heart-wrenching challenges. Dr. Harper worked frantically to stabilize them enough for transport, knowing that moving them in their current condition carried serious risks. The staff struggled to maintain their composure as they prepared discharge papers and medical records. Emily spent those final hours at the hospital, desperately searching for legal alternatives, but each avenue led to the same conclusion: without significant financial resources or political support, their options had run out. The sight of transport crates being prepared for Bella and her puppies felt like a personal failure. Old Joe, who had become a fixture at the hospital, took the news particularly hard. The veteran who had watched over Bella during her darkest days now faced the prospect of losing her again. His military bearing cracked as he sat beside her bed, softly sharing stories of his own battles lost and won. The media coverage of the legal defeat painted a complex picture. National outlets focused on the property rights angle, while local reporters like Michael Chen tried to capture the human cost of the decision. The sight of Emily, stripped of her firefighting career and facing mounting legal bills, became a symbol of the price of standing up for one's beliefs. The weight of successive defeats pushed everyone involved in Bella's case to their breaking points. Emily found herself alone in her small apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and termination papers from the fire department. The dream she had pursued since childhood lay in ruins, along with her savings and professional reputation. Sleep became elusive as Emily relived memories of the forest rescue, questioning every decision. Maybe if I had followed protocol. If I hadn't gotten involved, the thought spiraled endlessly, accompanied by images of Bella's terrified eyes when Mark's transport team arrived at the hospital. Dr. Harper retreated into herself, her normally confident demeanor crumbling under the strain of professional investigations and personal doubt. The veterinary board's inquiry forced her to defend years of medical decisions, while watching her most critical patients being taken away. Her teenage daughter's increasingly distant behavior served as a painful reminder of the personal costs of her dedication. "I don't even know who you are anymore," her daughter had said during their last phone call. "It's like this dog matters more than your own family." The words cut deep, especially as Dr. Harper faced the possibility of losing both her patient and her medical license. Rachel Mitchell's promising legal career seemed to evaporate overnight. Law firms that had previously shown interest in hiring her now returned her calls with polite rejections. The legal aid office placed her on probation, citing concerns about her judgment and resource allocation. Her passionate defense of animal rights had branded her as a liability in the conservative legal community. The hospital staff struggled to maintain their professional composure as the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Jenny Thompson broke down during rounds, unable to enter the now empty room where Bella and her puppies had stayed. Dave Wilson's usual jokes fell silent as he packed away the special equipment they had used for Bella's treatment. Old Joe disappeared from his usual spots around the hospital, his absence a stark reminder of how many lives Bella had touched. The homeless veteran who had shown such courage in testifying against Mark seemed to vanish into the shadows of the city, taking with him countless untold stories of Bella's early struggles. The community began to fracture along deepening fault lines. Long-standing friendships ended over disagreements about the case. Local businesses that had supported Bella's cause faced continuing boycotts, while others rushed to align themselves with Mark's apparent victory. The "We Stand with Bella" signs disappeared one by one, replaced by an uneasy silence. Martha Ramirez faced the possible closure of her pet supply store, the boycott organized by Mark's supporters having taken a severe toll on her business. The shop that had served as a gathering point for Bella's supporters stood nearly empty, its shelves a testament to the cost of taking a stand. Emily's support network crumbled as friends and colleagues distanced themselves, fear for their own careers outweighing personal loyalty. Even her elderly landlady, who had initially been sympathetic, began making pointed comments about late rent payments and the need for reliable tenants. The media attention, once a source of hope for raising awareness, turned toxic. Comment sections filled with cruel speculation about Emily's motives and mental state. Mark's PR team skillfully planted stories questioning her stability and fitness to care for animals, while her unemployment and financial struggles became public fodder. Scout's uncertain fate weighed heaviest on everyone's minds. The tiny puppy who had fought so hard for survival was now being transported to an unknown facility, his delicate health hanging in the balance. The thought of him separated from the careful monitoring and treatment protocol Dr. Harper had developed haunted the entire medical team. The crisis of faith extended beyond individuals to shake the very foundations of their beliefs in justice and fairness. The system they had trusted to protect the vulnerable had instead protected property rights and power. The idea that doing the right thing would eventually be rewarded seemed suddenly naive and childish. Emily found herself questioning everything she had believed about courage and duty. The principles that had guided her through firefighter training and into that burning forest now seemed to mock her. The cost of heroism, it appeared, was the destruction of the hero. The darkness of this period seemed complete, with no light visible at the end of the tunnel. Yet somewhere in the city, a mother dog and her puppies still fought for survival, their fate now tied to the very system they had been rescued from. The question hanging over everyone was whether they had the strength to keep fighting, or if this defeat marked the end of their journey. The turning point came from an unexpected source on a rainy Tuesday morning. Sarah Anderson, Bella's original owner, arrived at the nearly empty animal hospital clutching a weathered cardboard box. Her frail appearance belied the strength in her voice as she asked to speak with Emily and Dr. Harper. "I've been a coward," Mrs. Anderson announced, placing the box on Dr. Harper's desk. "I've been too afraid to face what I allowed to happen, but I can't stay silent anymore." Inside the box lay years of carefully preserved documentation, photographs, veterinary records, and most importantly, a detailed paper trail of Mark Hamilton's deception. The evidence was damning. Letters from Mark outlining his rescue organization, forged credentials from veterinary associations, and carefully crafted references, all part of an elaborate scheme to acquire purebred dogs for his breeding operation. Mrs. Anderson had kept everything, her guilt over Bella's fate driving her to document the manipulation she had endured. "He didn't just take Bella," she explained, her voice trembling. "There were others. So many others. I started investigating after she disappeared, tracking down other families he had approached." The box contained statements from multiple victims of Mark's scheme, each telling a similar story of deception and loss. More crucial were the financial records Mrs. Anderson had managed to obtain through her late husband's banking connections. The documents revealed a complex network of shell companies and suspicious transactions linking Mark to known puppy mills across 3 states. The legitimate business facade he had maintained in Maple Grove was just the tip of a much darker operation. Rachel Mitchell, called in to review the evidence, could hardly contain her excitement. "This isn't just about Bella anymore," she explained. "These documents show a pattern of fraud, animal cruelty, and money laundering. It's enough to trigger a federal investigation." Mrs. Anderson's testimony about Mark's methods was particularly revealing. He had studied her, learning her vulnerabilities and crafting his approach accordingly. The same technique had been used on other elderly pet owners, exploiting their desire to ensure their beloved animals would be well cared for. "He showed me pictures of a beautiful property with spacious kennels," Mrs. Anderson recalled. "Talked about his late wife's love for animals. Even brought me cookies and sat listening to stories about Bella for hours. It was all an act, but I wanted so badly to believe him." The revelation of Mark's true nature sent shockwaves through the community. Several prominent business owners who had supported him came forward with their own stories of manipulation and threatened retaliation. The carefully constructed image of a respected community leader began to crumble. Old Joe emerged from his self-imposed exile to add his own evidence to Mrs. Anderson's collection. His military training had led him to keep detailed records of activities around Mark's property, including dates, times, and descriptions of suspicious deliveries and late-night transport of animals. The local media, led by Michael Chen, began connecting dots that had been hiding in plain sight. Reports of missing pets, suspicious breeding operations, and questionable business practices formed a pattern that stretched back years. Mark's influence had kept these stories isolated and buried, but now they emerged as part of a larger narrative. Emily and Dr. Harper worked through the night with Rachel, organizing the evidence for presentation to the authorities. The documentation provided context for Bella's condition when she escaped the malnutrition, the old injuries, the fear of human contact. Each piece of evidence strengthened their case for permanent custody. Mrs. Anderson's courage in coming forward inspired others to break their silence. Former employees, neighboring business owners, and even some of Mark's social circle began sharing information about practices they had witnessed but been afraid to report. The most heartbreaking revelations came from Mrs. Anderson's detailed records of Bella's early life. Photos showed a happy, healthy puppy growing into a gentle young dog, a stark contrast to her condition after months in Mark's possession. These images, more than any legal document, illustrated the true impact of his actions. Mark Hamilton's facade finally cracked during a dramatic confrontation at the county courthouse. Faced with mounting evidence and the collapse of his carefully constructed public image, he experienced a breakdown that would transform the entire case. "I never meant for it to go this far," he burst out during cross-examination, his polished demeanor crumbling. "After Sarah died, the debts just kept piling up. The breeding operation seemed like an easy solution. Then one compromise led to another and another." The revelation of his late wife Sarah's story provided crucial context. A dedicated animal rescue worker, she had died trying to save dogs from a fire at their original shelter. Mark's subsequent descent into animal exploitation represented not just a moral failure, but a complete betrayal of her memory. "Sarah would have hated what I've become," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "When I saw Bella in that forest fire, it was like seeing my wife all over again. But instead of helping, I tried to maintain control. I became everything she fought against." His confession opened floodgates of repressed guilt and trauma. Mark described how his initial financial struggles after Sarah's death had led him to connect with questionable business partners. What started as a legitimate breeding operation gradually transformed into something much darker. The courtroom fell silent as Mark detailed his own psychological deterioration. Each decision to prioritize profit over animal welfare had eaten away at him, leading to increased drinking and emotional isolation. His aggressive actions against Emily and her supporters had been desperate attempts to prevent his whole world from unraveling. Rachel Mitchell, showing remarkable insight, steered the questioning toward redemption rather than punishment. "Mr. Hamilton, what would Sarah want you to do now?" she asked quietly. The question hung in the air for several long moments before Mark responded. "She would want me to make it right," he answered finally. "Not just for Bella, but for all of them." He proceeded to provide detailed information about his entire operation, including names of associates, locations of illegal breeding facilities, and financial records that would prove crucial to broader investigations. The transformation continued as Mark insisted on visiting Bella at the specialist facility where she was being treated. The meeting was tense, with Emily and Dr. Harper present to ensure Bella's comfort. To everyone's surprise, Mark broke down completely upon seeing her condition. "I remember when you first came to my property," he said to Bella, his voice thick with emotion. "You had the same gentle eyes as the dog Sarah used to rescue. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. I'm so sorry." His change of heart manifested in concrete actions. Mark signed over full custody of Bella and her puppies to Emily, providing additional funds for their ongoing medical care. He then began working with investigators to shut down the puppy mill network he had helped create. The local community watched in amazement as Mark Hamilton, once their most prominent businessman, dedicated himself to dismantling the very operation he had built. He provided testimony against his former associates facing threats and retaliation with the same determination he had once used to build his illegal empire. Perhaps most significantly, Mark used his considerable resources to establish a legitimate animal rescue foundation, naming it after his late wife. The foundation's first project would be a state-of-the-art veterinary care center for abused animals, with Dr. Harper invited to serve as chief medical advisor. Emily found herself struggling to reconcile the Mark who had threatened her livelihood with the broken man now working to make amends. His transformation seemed almost too dramatic to be believed, yet his actions backed up his words with consistent evidence of genuine change. The media narrative shifted from vilification to redemption, though Michael Chen maintained a balanced perspective in his coverage. "This isn't about excusing past actions," he wrote, "but about recognizing that change is possible when people confront their own darkness." The revelations about Mark's operation and his subsequent transformation sparked a profound shift in Maple Grove's community consciousness. The divisions that had torn the town apart began to heal as people came together to acknowledge past mistakes and work toward meaningful change. Captain Richards was among the first to publicly admit error, calling a press conference at the fire station. "We lost sight of what truly matters," he announced, with Emily standing beside him. "Our job is to protect and serve all living beings, not just follow protocols." He not only reinstated Emily but promoted her to lead a new animal rescue unit within the department. The business community, many of whom had sided with Mark out of fear or self-interest, began actively supporting animal welfare initiatives. The Chamber of Commerce established a fund to help Martha Ramirez's pet supply store recover from the boycott, recognizing her courage in standing up for her principles despite personal cost. "We chose safety over righteousness," admitted James Thompson, the Chamber's president. "It's time to show what this community really stands for." Local businesses that had removed their "We Stand with Bella" signs now displayed new ones reading "Never Again," committing to support animal welfare initiatives. The veterinary board not only cleared Dr. Harper of all complaints but commended her dedication and innovative treatment approaches. Her methods in treating Bella and Scout's complex injuries were documented for teaching purposes, and she was invited to develop new protocols for handling trauma cases in rescue animals. Rachel Mitchell's career underwent a dramatic revival. Law firms that had previously shunned her now sought her expertise in animal welfare cases. The Legal Aid Office created a dedicated animal rights division under her leadership, recognizing that her controversial stance had actually put them ahead of an emerging legal trend. Old Joe's role in the case led to unexpected recognition. His military-style documentation of Mark's activities had proven crucial, and the community rallied to help him rebuild his life. Veterans groups provided housing assistance, while his newfound status as a local hero opened doors to employment opportunities. The local schools incorporated lessons from Bella's case into their curriculum, teaching students about compassion, civic responsibility, and the importance of standing up for what's right regardless of personal cost. The Pennies for Puppies campaign evolved into a permanent student-led animal welfare committee. Local government officials, some of whom had tried to remain neutral during the controversy, now worked to strengthen animal protection laws. The city council passed what became known as Bella's Law, establishing stricter regulations for breeding facilities and stronger penalties for animal abuse. The media's role evolved as well. Michael Chen's thoughtful coverage was recognized with a Regional Journalism Award, and he used his platform to continue investigating similar cases in other communities. His example inspired a new generation of reporters to prioritize truth over sensationalism. The hospital staff's dedication was acknowledged with increased funding and support. Jenny Thompson established a training program for veterinary technicians specializing in rescue animal care, while Dave Wilson's mechanical skills were put to use designing specialized equipment for injured animals. Religious leaders who had remained silent during the controversy now spoke out about moral obligations to protect vulnerable creatures. The Interfaith Council established a pet food bank and emergency veterinary fund, ensuring that financial hardship would never force pet owners to surrender their animals. The transformation extended to law enforcement as well. Officer Burke's Animal Control Unit received additional funding and training, and his meticulous record-keeping became a model for departments nationwide. The police force established closer partnerships with animal welfare organizations, creating a more effective response system for abuse cases. Perhaps most significantly, the community learned to recognize and celebrate everyday heroes. The people who had stood by their principles despite personal cost. Emily, Dr. Harper, Rachel, Old Joe, and countless others became examples of moral courage that inspired others to speak up and take action. Martha Ramirez's pet supply store, once threatened by boycotts, became a community hub for animal welfare initiatives. She established a memorial wall featuring photos and stories of rescued animals, with Bella's story given pride of place but accompanied by many others, each representing a life saved through community action. The final court hearing in Bella's case took place in a packed courthouse, with supporters filling every available seat. Judge Montgomery, who had overseen the entire journey, sat ready to deliver her final ruling on what had become one of the most significant animal welfare cases in the state's history. Rachel Mitchell presented the closing arguments with quiet confidence, her earlier uncertainty replaced by seasoned expertise. She wove together the complex threads of evidence. Mrs. Anderson's documentation, Mark's confession, medical records, and testimony from dozens of witnesses into a compelling narrative of transformation and justice. Your Honor, Rachel concluded, this case has evolved far beyond a simple question of property rights. It has become about our responsibility as a society to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The decisions made in this courtroom will resonate far beyond Maple Grove. The judge's ruling was comprehensive and groundbreaking. Not only did she grant permanent custody of Bella and her puppies to Emily, but she also established several important legal precedents regarding animal welfare cases. Her written opinion specifically addressed the need to consider animals' emotional well-being alongside their physical care. Mark's role in the final hearing surprised many. Rather than fighting the ruling, he provided additional testimony about the broader issues of animal exploitation, helping to strengthen the case for industry reform. His foundation pledged substantial resources to support implementation of the new regulations. The legal victory extended beyond Bella's immediate case. Judge Montgomery's ruling included provisions for monitoring and investigating other breeding operations, with clear guidelines for law enforcement and animal control agencies. The decision provided a framework that other jurisdictions could follow. In recognition of the extraordinary circumstances of this case, Judge Montgomery stated, "The court is establishing the Bella Fund, a dedicated resource for supporting animal rescue and rehabilitation efforts. The fund would be overseen by a board including Emily, Dr. Harper, and other key figures from the case." Emily's reinstatement to the fire department was officially recognized with back pay and a commendation for her actions during the forest fire. Captain Richards personally apologized for his earlier stance, acknowledging that her instincts about Bella had been correct from the start. Dr. Harper received formal vindication from the veterinary board, which not only dismissed all complaints but also commended her innovative treatment protocols. Her methods for handling complex trauma cases in rescue animals became part of the standard curriculum at veterinary schools. The legal framework established by the case had immediate practical effects. Local law enforcement received additional training in recognizing and responding to animal abuse cases. Officer Burke's department established a specialized unit dedicated to investigating breeding operations and enforcing the new regulations. Rachel Mitchell's career took a dramatic turn as she became a leading authority on animal welfare law. Law firms that had previously shunned her now sought her expertise, and she used her newfound influence to continue advocating for stronger animal protection measures. The victory created ripple effects throughout the legal system. Other jurisdictions began reviewing their animal welfare statutes, using Maple Grove's new regulations as a model. Animal rights organizations cited the case as a precedent in their own legal battles. The ceremony transferring official custody of Bella and her puppies to Emily was attended by hundreds of supporters. Judge Montgomery made a point of personally signing the documents, adding a handwritten note commending Emily's courage and dedication throughout the long legal battle. Mark's testimony about the broader network of illegal breeding operations led to multiple investigations and arrests across several states. His cooperation helped authorities shut down numerous puppy mills and rescue hundreds of animals from abusive situations. The foundation Mark established in his late wife's memory became a powerful force for change in the industry. Working with legitimate breeders and rescue organizations, it developed new standards for animal care and welfare that went beyond mere legal compliance. In the aftermath of the legal victory, personal transformations proved just as significant as the legal precedents. Emily's promotion to head of the fire department's new animal rescue unit came with resources and authority she hadn't imagined possible a year earlier. Her office, once relegated to a corner of the station, now occupied a prominent space complete with specialized equipment for animal emergencies. Bella's recovery, once uncertain, became a testament to resilience and healing. The burns that had threatened her life healed into badges of courage, visible reminders of her journey but no longer sources of pain. Her confidence returned fully, and she began accompanying Emily on rescue missions, her presence bringing calm to other frightened animals. "She knows what they're going through," Emily explained to a reporter watching Bella comfort a rescued cat. "She remembers being scared and hurt, but she also remembers being saved. Somehow she communicates that hope to them." Scout's transformation was perhaps the most remarkable. The tiny puppy who had fought so hard for survival grew into a gentle but strong dog with an uncanny ability to sense distress in others. His small size, once a weakness, became an advantage as he could approach injured animals without intimidating them. Dr. Harper's innovative treatment protocols gained international recognition. Veterinary professionals from around the country visited Maple Grove Animal Hospital to learn her methods for treating complex trauma cases. The hospital expanded, adding a dedicated wing for rescue animals named in Bella's honor. The other puppies found their own paths to service. One became a therapy dog at the local children's hospital, another joined a search and rescue team, and 2 others were adopted by families who had supported Bella's cause from the beginning. The siblings remained close, gathering regularly for what the community fondly called Bella's family reunions. Emily's personal life blossomed alongside her professional success. The strength she had shown throughout Bella's case attracted admirers, but it was a fellow firefighter's quiet support during the darkest days that developed into something deeper. He understood both her dedication to service and her special bond with Bella and Scout. The hospital staff who had stood by Bella found their own rewards. Jenny Thompson's dedication led to her promotion to head veterinary nurse, while Dave Wilson's mechanical skills were sought after by other hospitals developing specialized equipment for injured animals. Their experiences during the case strengthened their commitment to animal welfare. Old Joe's life underwent a complete transformation. The homeless veteran who had watched over Bella became a respected consultant for the animal rescue unit, his observational skills and documentation methods proving invaluable in investigating abuse cases. The community helped him secure housing near the fire station, where he continued his role as a guardian of vulnerable animals. Martha Ramirez's pet supply store expanded into a community center for animal welfare. The back room where supporters had once gathered in secret became a formal meeting space for education and advocacy groups. Her business thrived as people recognized the courage she had shown in standing up for her principles. Rachel Mitchell's law practice grew beyond her wildest expectations, but she never forgot the lessons of Bella's case. She maintained a pro bono division dedicated to animal welfare cases, mentoring young lawyers who shared her passion for justice. Her office walls featured photos of Bella and her puppies, reminding visitors of where her journey began. The relationship between Emily and Bella deepened into something beyond owner and pet. They developed an almost telepathic connection, each anticipating the other's needs and responses. During rescue operations, they worked as one unit, their shared experiences creating a bond that observers found remarkable. Scout's role evolved into that of a bridge between humans and animals. His gentle presence helped ease the fears of both rescued animals and traumatized humans. He seemed to inherit his mother's capacity for empathy, combined with an almost supernatural ability to know exactly who needed his comfort most. The personal victories extended to the broader community. People who had taken stands supporting Bella found their courage rewarded in unexpected ways. Business owners who had risked boycotts saw their customer base grow stronger. Teachers who had incorporated lessons from the case watched their students develop deeper empathy and stronger moral compasses. Even Mark found a measure of personal redemption through his work with the foundation. Though he could never fully atone for his past actions, his efforts to prevent others from following his dark path brought a degree of peace. He became a powerful advocate for industry reform, his insider knowledge helping to create more effective regulations. The establishment of Bella's Brigade as a formal foundation marked the beginning of a lasting transformation in animal welfare. What started as a grassroots movement in Maple Grove expanded into a national organization, with chapters opening in cities across the country. The Foundation's mission extended beyond rescue and rehabilitation to address systemic issues in animal welfare. Every animal deserves what Bella found a chance at healing and happiness, Emily explained at the Foundation's launch ceremony. The organization focused on 3 key areas: emergency rescue operations, medical care for injured animals, and advocacy for stronger protection laws. Bella herself, still bearing the scars of her journey, became its living symbol of resilience and hope. The Foundation's first major initiative was the creation of a network of emergency response teams modeled after Emily's unit. These teams, trained in both firefighting and animal rescue, filled a crucial gap in emergency services. Each team included veterinary professionals and was equipped with specialized gear for animal rescue situations. Education became another cornerstone of the Foundation's work. Dr. Harper developed a comprehensive curriculum for veterinary students focusing on trauma care in rescue animals. The program, initially launched at local veterinary schools, gained national recognition and was adopted by institutions across the country. Scouts' remarkable ability to comfort traumatized animals led to the development of a specialized therapy program. The Scouts Honor Program paired rescued animals with trained therapy dogs, using their natural empathy to help in the healing process. The success rates of this approach drew attention from animal behaviorists worldwide. The legal framework established during Bella's case continued to evolve. Rachel Mitchell worked with legislators to draft comprehensive animal welfare legislation that became known as the Bella Laws. These regulations set new standards for breeding operations, increased penalties for abuse, and established funding mechanisms for enforcement. The Maple Grove Animal Hospital expanded into a teaching facility, with Dr. Harper's innovative treatment protocols becoming standard practice. The hospital's success in handling complex trauma cases made it a model for other institutions, and its training programs attracted veterinary professionals from around the world. Community engagement remained at the heart of the Foundation's mission. The We Stand With Bella signs evolved into a national symbol of commitment to animal welfare. Businesses displaying the sign pledged to follow ethical practices and support animal protection initiatives. Mark's redemption story became a powerful tool for industry reform. His insider knowledge helped authorities identify and shut down illegal breeding operations, while his foundation worked to rehabilitate former puppy mills into legitimate rescue centers. His public speaking engagements, though difficult, helped others understand how good intentions could be corrupted by greed. The impact on Maple Grove itself was profound and lasting. The town became known as a model community for animal welfare, with visitors coming to study its integrated approach to animal protection. Local businesses thrived on this new reputation, with animal-friendly policies becoming a point of pride. Old Joe's documentation methods were developed into a formal training program for animal welfare investigators. His systematic approach to gathering and organizing evidence born of military experience proved invaluable in building cases against abusers. The Joe method became standard practice for animal control officers nationwide. The ripple effects touched unexpected areas. Schools reported improved empathy and reduced bullying after incorporating lessons from Bella's story into their curriculum. Mental health professionals noted the therapeutic value of involving rescued animals in counseling sessions. The business community discovered that ethical practices could coexist with profitability. The annual Bella's Brigade Conference became a major event in the animal welfare world. Professionals from various fields, veterinary medicine, law enforcement, emergency services, and advocacy gathered to share knowledge and develop new strategies for protecting vulnerable animals. Perhaps most significantly, the Foundation's work helped change public perception of rescue animals. Stories of transformation like Bella's and Scout's showed that past trauma didn't define an animal's future. Adoption rates at participating shelters increased dramatically, with former abuse cases finding loving homes. The legacy of one mother dog's courage in a burning forest had grown into a movement that touched countless lives, both human and animal. As Emily often reminded people, Bella didn't just survive, she showed us all how to be better humans. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story of Bella and her incredible journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What touched you most about her story of courage, love, and resilience? Has your pet ever shown similar bravery or dedication? Share your experiences with our community. If you believe in the power of these stories to inspire change and promote animal welfare, please support our work by subscribing to our channel. Every subscription helps us continue creating meaningful content that raises awareness about animal rescue and protection. Don't forget to like this video and share it with friends and family who might be moved by Bella's journey. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of animals who need our help and compassion. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories of hope, courage, and the incredible bond between humans and animals. Copyright.